to Pals in Politics, the place to hear from those teaching, learning, and impacted by politics, government, citizenship, and democracy.
Hello there, and welcome to our latest Pals and Politics. This is our podcast where we strip away the spin and we talk to people who are living, working, studying, and impacted by politics, government, citizenship, and democracy. So whether you're a student, a teacher, or just trying to figure out how the world actually works, you're in the right place. And if you enjoy this part of the conversation, please feel free to sign up to our Political Education for Students Politics Classroom, where you can see an extended version of the chat. Today, I'm exceptionally fortunate and very lucky to be joined by someone that is making huge headwinds in quite a short space of time. So today we are joined by Charlie Hall. Hi, Charlie.
Good morning, James. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Never better. Thank you for that very generous introduction. I think the sunshine is making us all feel very optimistic and happy today about the world.
Absolutely. Now, I was really optimistic about your appearance on here even before I knew the weather. So I'm really grateful that you've taken your time, and I know you're going to spend a lot of today talking about things that a lot of people listening will find really helpful. So just as a basis of an introduction, Charlie is a public affairs professional. He has substantial experience in government relations, in regulation, policy analysis, and strategic planning. He's also, if that wasn't enough, a former councillor, a local government officer, and a parliamentary staffer who has a strong track record of working with senior business leaders, policymakers, and in national, regional, and local political environments. So, wow, there's a lot we can unpack there, Charlie. And as I said, I think there's a lot in there that's going to be really useful to people. So, first question to you, and then I'll shut up a bit. What strikes me, just reading that out loud, what strikes me, Charlie, is just how much experience you have of the world of politics and policy, at, if I may say so, quite a relatively early stage in your career, in your working life. Can you give us what you feel are some of your career highlights so far, what you're proud of, what you've learned, what reflections you have?
Absolutely. I feel like I've been really lucky in what I've been able to do so far. Just for reference, I graduated in 2021, and now for about 4 to 5 years, I've been in Westminster, in London, and really determined to create a great career for myself. I love politics. I find it fascinating. I studied it at A level, and I knew I wanted to have a job in it and try and make a life from it. And it's just so intriguing and entertaining and interesting and relevant to absolutely everything for people from all walks of life. And since being in Westminster, I started off as a parliamentary caseworker, and one of the biggest highlights for me and one of the most powerful moments, and one of those kind of opportunities that made me realize, wow, like even at a young age, you can really contribute to the democratic system and support people and help people, was when the Ukraine invasion happened in kind of March 2022. And as the parliamentary caseworker for the MP, it was my job to help administer and support any queries we had around the Homes for Ukraine scheme. And you can imagine that the system was overwhelmed. It was also at a time when we were coming out of COVID, so there were other concerns around access to passports, a tremendous amount of stuff coming in. And, you know, it's your job to support your MP and make sure that all of these cases are logged and handled in an appropriate way. And there were some amazing people who we helped move over and set up a life, and also so lovely to see people in this country as well kind of coming forward and offering that support, and so desperate to reach out. And we got over literally hundreds of people, and then we had a constituency surgery session, which is where you kind of meet people face to face, chat through their problems, what's going on, and the MP offers them help in person. And we had them all in one room, and they were so incredibly grateful for the help that we'd supported, and also spoke about how the community and the country had, you know, welcomed them with open arms. And I thought it was just such a powerful moment, and I felt kind of really lucky to be involved with that and help people. And, you know, I think with kind of casework and working for an MP, sometimes you can't help everyone, and that's a genuine shame. But I think it's in those moments where you bring people into like a safer space and help them with things that are, putting their life at risk ultimately, those most extreme cases, which just incredible. And also there are some kind of pinch me moments that I've had kind of one-to-one FaceTime with a couple of former prime ministers, and I grew up on a council estate in rural Devon, and I would never have dreamt in a million years that I would be in the presence of these people. And it's such a humbling moment, because you just realize kind of how far you've come, and fundamentally this whole area, this whole line of work is just about people. And when you've got two people in front of each other, it's just about those interpersonal relationships, and everything just gets leveled out, and it's amazing. So that's kind of a couple of highlights for me of what I've experienced.
That's fantastic, and absolutely great work you did with the Ukraine housing relocation. When I was a head teacher, we had a couple of teachers at my school who took in people from Ukraine, and I know they found it incredibly rewarding to be able to make that difference. So thank you for all the work you've done at that end. Can you develop just a bit more what a parliamentary caseworker is and what they do, just in case anyone who is listening to you and is clearly inspired by it knows a bit more about what the job involves?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, young people looking at careers and maybe considering working in Parliament, that a parliamentary caseworker is probably where you would begin. There are no specific or set routes into the world of Westminster and working for an MP, but the majority of people would start off as a caseworker, and you can either be a caseworker in the constituency or a caseworker who works in Westminster in Parliament, but fundamentally the jobs are the same. And it is all about kind of giving, I'd say, the MP the capacity that they need to process all of those many queries that come into their inbox. I mean, I used to monitor the inbox every morning, and you would have genuinely thousands of queries from people who, when they don't know who to turn to, they go to their MP. And that's what this democratic system is all about, fundamentally, is having that personal link to your constituency MP as the bedrock of everything we do. And it could be anything from, a pothole that you need to get filled in, a passport missing in the system, kind of much more serious concerns around kind of educational healthcare plans, about visas. You honestly could not count the kind of varied array of subjects that come in, and your job is to help the MP navigate what to do, the different levers that you could pull. You might feel like you need to send a formal letter to a minister. You might feel like you need to write to a cabinet member in a local council. You might feel the need to talk to another colleague in the team who maybe manages the social media or the comm side of things, and actually raise it on Facebook or Instagram, and actually invite other constituents to write in and actually tell you about how they've experienced a similar problem, and kind of build up a bit of a campaign around something, so you've got the weight to get things done. There are various kind of internal systems in place. Like there's a piece of software called caseworker.mp, which gives you like a reference code and allows you to log all of these things, because if you didn't have a formal system, and I have no idea how they used to do this when it was just letters, correspondence will go missing. And it's so important that you have a way to keep track of, especially those most important cases, which can genuinely be life or death, and ensure that there are actions. So I'd really recommend the job. And I think no matter what I've done in my career, it is that job that I've done that makes me feel like I've had the most impact on people's lives.
That's fantastic. And I appreciate you said there's a variety of ways in. If you don't mind me asking, what was your way? What did you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I trawled a wonderful website called Work for MP, and I would absolutely recommend it to listeners of this podcast. It is set up and managed by people who understand what kind of jobs people are looking for, anything from, I'd say, entry level to kind of mid-level. It will talk to you about what will be required, a little bit about the MP, what they're expecting from you. And it's not just caseworker roles on there, parliamentary assistant jobs, public affairs, policy. And for me, I was looking for an MP that had similar interests in me, both in terms of what their constituency looked like and some of their maybe policy interests as well. And I was really fortunate enough to work for someone called Anna Firth, who took over from Sir David Amess back in 2021. So there's a powerful background to kind of her arrival in Parliament as well. And she was looking for people that kind of really cared about supporting communities and also helping put a brand new city on the map and supporting kind of culture and the arts and business, which I'm really passionate about. So sent in a cover letter, CV, popped up to Parliament from Devon, had an interview, had a second interview, which was actually delayed by the Ukrainian invasion, which just shows how, every day something can change in Parliament. And then had my security clearance sorted. And within a couple of months, I was packing my bags, heading up in a car with my mum and arriving in London for the first time.
How was that? How did that feel?
I mean, the drive went incredibly well. We did not fall out once, even going through the middle of London. But, I'd lived in the Southwest all of my life. I'd went to uni in the Southwest. I did live in uni halls and with my friends, but this was my first proper experience of living, working in a big, thriving, exciting, but also terrifying city. But I had a couple of people here that I knew. And I would say, one thing about Westminster life, and I suspect we'll talk about this a bit later on, is everyone's so friendly. And I was terrified. I thought, gosh, you read about all of these stories in the papers, in the media, about incidences where people go through genuinely horrible and uncomfortable situations. But I just networked with an amazing bunch of kind of 20 to 30-year-olds and have made friends for life, I hope, if they're listening to this.
Well, we'll try our best to make sure they do.
Indeed.
That's honestly such an inspirational story, Charlie. What would you say then? What advice would you give? You said you submitted a cover letter, you submitted your CV.
Yeah.
There was the process. What can people do to really maximize their chances of getting these roles or getting onto internships or placements?
Yeah, I think you have to work out what your passions are. I think you need to understand why it is you want to be involved in politics, and what it is you both want to contribute but also gain from it in terms of experience and skills. You need to think about the kind of roles that you want, whether you care about comms and social media, and there is a really important place for that in the democratic system these days, love it or loathe it. Or if you want to kind of be helping people on the coalface, or if you want to kind of go into kind of PA work and diary management, and you just need to have a think and, reach out to people. And I'm really fortunate to take part in a couple of mentor schemes. And I think it's so important to people to go out and have a look at those and reach out to people and, ask people, what is it like there, and get a feel for the place. And, when you're writing your cover letter and you're kind of finalizing your CV, pull out things that you've done before where you have engaged with the public. I would say that, I worked for the co-op for 5 years on the tills, and it is still to this day the experience I rely on the most. Do not underestimate the power of working in a shop and dealing with the public every day. The interpersonal skills you pick up, the ability to handle complaints and speak to people from all walks of life is next to none. And I think it's why I appreciate, I've done a bit of work around this in my public affairs world, the power of hospitality and retail and giving young people those skills. And as you prepare, whether you're in sixth form or in uni, see if you can do a bit of volunteering work or try and find some work experience with an MP and just show on your cover letter that you really do care. And from what you can do with the experience and skills that you have at that time, you've tried to get what you can and you're ready for the next stage.
That's fantastic. Really, really good advice there. And I think that's it's not your general formulaic. It's actually really human. And I think that really taps into what you were saying. One of the things you said actually there I really took away was just how friendly you felt Westminster was. And that's really interesting, because when we talk through the work we do, when we talk to young people and adults, to be fair, it's not just young people, there is a real sense that Westminster isn't particularly a friendly or relatable place, that it actually feels quite distant or quite removed from the world. And I think you only have to turn on the news to see quite a bit of criticism of not just politicians, but the civil service and Westminster in general and Whitehall in general. What do you say to those people who we meet and
Mm.
hold those views?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point and a really important question. And obviously, so much of what we experience in politics, we consume through kind of news media and more and more and more social media as well, which is a whole other debate in itself. And when it's things like PMQs and excerpts from like a liaison committee session, which is where all the chairs of the select committees kind of interrogate the prime minister once every quarter, you see the most emotionally charged moments, and especially at PMQs as well. It is designed to be a bit of theatre. That is what the preparation is for. And I think when the public consume that, there is a particular kind of representation of the political system that we absorb and believe is the truth. And Westminster kind of keeps that alive by always approaching these things in the same way. And then, when you also read separately away from those parliamentary processes, kind of scandal stories, anything like that. And I know over the last kind of half a decade, it has felt more and more like Westminster is this kind of horrific, dodgy, corrupt place. I think those terrible news stories are amplified, and I understand why. And it's so important that people read these and hold people in power to account about the bad things that happen. But it's kind of all the good news stories and all the amazing cross-party political work that happens outside of PMQs, especially, that doesn't get caught on camera and doesn't get talked about. And that's the way the system kind of pushes it. But I've seen some amazing work and kind of moments of unity. When I was working for my first boss, really passionate about animal welfare, and there are kind of policy priorities like that just reach across the whole house and bring people together. There are kind of things around pubs and hospitality that there can be particular dividing lines politically, but fundamentally everyone feels really passionate about supporting local businesses and making sure those businesses survive. And it is a bit of a shame that is not out there in the public eye. And I'd say beyond kind of elected officials, kind of as staffers, and I'm sure civil servants feel the same way, when you're working in the background, you are kind of shielded from those heated political moments, and you're just kind of working to keep the ship sailing. And I've just had the most epic kind of 5 years, like I said at the start of this, of meeting people from all different political persuasions, people that are apolitical, civil servants, people that work for think tanks, and the kind of social culture in Westminster is next to none. And I just feel so fortunate to have quite a big network of people now that it's not just about kind of give and take and kind of asking each other to do a favor or a bit of information or whatever. It is genuine friendships. And I would say that Westminster is changing for the better. And I know not everyone will have that story, but I'm hoping to bring a little bit of positive light to people that are thinking about working here.
That's fantastic, thank you. And so you stopped working in Parliament itself a few years ago, relatively recently, and since then you've had a few roles working in policy. So the helping make and execute law, I'm assuming. How has that shaped your view of how politics impacts all of us in the real world?
Yeah. So when kind of my time in Parliament was coming to an end, and I'd say on average, and again, there's no fixed set of time for this, but about 2 to 3 years, people will work there and then start to consider what they might want to do next. They might pivot careers, or they might go into comms, or work for an agency, or work for a trade association, which is what I did first. And the reason why I wanted to go and work for the British Beer and Pub Association, which is the place I left in December, is because I'd done a lot of work around hospitality in Parliament. I know it was a genuine passion of mine. I'd met people that worked in the kind of corporate affairs, public affairs world, and they absolutely loved it. And I thought, wow, their job is politics and hospitality, and they are going out there and they are fighting for all these amazing people across the country who kind of keep their communities alive and support amazing British businesses and really push for something that, again, everyone in all parties really cares about. And I really wanted to take a bit of ownership over my work. And obviously, when you work for an MP, you're working for them, right? And whatever they want to happen happens, and you're very much just kind of creating their image and supporting them, and that's absolutely right. But I wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about what I would work like in a more autonomous role, and being involved in the policy and public affairs process is amazing. And I know there's, you know, always kind of an eye on lobbying, and quite rightly kind of vested interest in all of that. But I'd say that is a kind of an outdated perception of how it all works now completely. It's honestly about ensuring that the policy that government puts forward is fed into by experts and proper evidence before you get to a situation where the government might announce something and it's, you know, being built from an honest position, but when it hits the real world, the impact it has is not what the government intended at all. And there's this, you know, amazing kind of constructive and open dialogue that happens with officials and ministers and MPs and businesses that ensures that that doesn't happen, and that the policy that comes forward does help people. And just kind of for listeners again, a trade association is basically businesses from one particular sector all coming together and having a collective voice that represents itself to government. And you know, that happens because it makes government life easier. They don't have all of these people coming in left, right and center and arguing for slightly different things. Instead, they have this unity voice that allows them to create efficient policy. And I've loved it. And I've basically been the middleman between business and government, and making sure that both sides understand what's going on. And it's a real position of privilege. I couldn't recommend it enough.
That's brilliant. So it's that educative and representative role that interest groups have in policy.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Charlie, before we take a short break. Lots of people listening will be doing A-level politics. You've already said it was very much your sort of signpost to where you wanted to go. What message do you have for those that are doing A-level politics or might be thinking about choosing it for their A-level?
Yeah, I'm so passionate about politics being taught in schools, both primary to secondary, and building up that knowledge. And if there's something, you know, if Bridget Phillipson is listening to this today, I would really encourage her to, you know, work even harder on introducing that as a possibly even a compulsory subject. I think it is like the fundamental bedrock of how people approach the world around them. And I, like you say, studied politics at AS and A2 level, and I think it's all kind of merged now. I know it's changed a bit since I was a young lad, but I remember two really vivid things. Number one, we learnt about voting systems, and I think if you don't, you know, have that knowledge, that information around the system that you operate in, and why certain things are good and why certain things are bad, and the way that different voting systems have to be a compromise, and what you lose and what you gain, then if you don't have that, you'll probably struggle a little bit more to understand about this crazy world of Westminster around us. And that information, and also at the time we were studying American politics when Trump was having his first go at the White House, and I just thought, as mad as the world seems right now, this is so cool that at A level, everything I'm doing in the classroom is genuinely also happening in real time outside of me. And we'd all sit together and watch the news and take notes and keep a diary about what was happening in the world. And I don't think there are many subjects where what you're learning could kind of change at any moment. And that means when you sit your exams at the end of it, if it is the way it was when I was doing it, I was like, wow, well, I watched the news this morning and I can bring that in. And it's just, it makes it all seem so much more worthwhile. So for those that are doing it right now, don't underestimate what you're picking up, what you're learning. You will rely on it for the rest of your life. And for those that are considering doing A-level politics, please do it. It's so important, and I do not regret it one bit.
Brilliant. That's so interesting, Charlie. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break there to let you get a breather. If you're enjoying what Charlie is saying, then you can catch the extended version within the Politics Classroom community, the link of which is in the comments. Please also subscribe and like. And if you have any comments for Charlie, post them. Charlie, thank you. We're going to be back in just a moment.